Mark here for a great Wisdom and Knowledge 5 podcast. I bring on Todd Cave. He is a fitness instructor, but also, instructs on the consciousness, the mind, ancient history, ancient hidden history. Todd, I want to talk today. Thanks so much for coming on, by the way. I want to talk today
Thanks for having me,
about,
man.
yeah, I want to talk today about ancient civilizations and how it ties in to how the world is run today, because it seems like there's a lot of coincidences. So let's get into it.
Yeah, first of all, Mark, thanks for having me.
Sure.
I'm honored to be on your show. And the thing is that to really understand today and the present, you need to be able to understand the past, and you have to have some understanding of history. So what I like to tell people is that history may not necessarily repeat itself, but it sure well rhymes. And when you start to study the ancient texts, you start to realize that there's a common theme where there are entities or deities, as they call themselves, that came here and basically manipulated man. And to understand this story, we need to go back to the oldest records that we have on Earth and the oldest writing system called cuneiform, which is in what we call the Sumerian Tablets. Now, the Sumerian tablets are about 5,500 years old and are about 3,200 to 3,400 BC. And in these tablets, it basically documents about a group of extraterrestrial beings called the Anunnaki who came here to Earth in search of resources. And when they came here, they started to mine the resources of Earth. But what ended up happening is that the people that came with them, they are called the Agigi or the Ajiji in these Sumerian Akkadian tablets. And they were mining for the gold and creating the dikes, making all of the dams and stuff for them to aid their process to extract the resources from Earth. And basically what happened is that the Agigi, what I like to do is I like to explain to people, because I'm using terms here, that the Anunnaki simply means those from heaven to earth came. And heaven, for us English speakers, is quite difficult to understand because we have the sky and the heaven, which are two words. But in most languages, and you see that heaven and sky are really the same word. For example, in Spanish is cielo, heaven and sky. In Portuguese is céu, which is heaven and sky. And in these ancient languages, it was one word meaning both. So us English speakers, we are the ones that have a difficult time to conceptualize that heaven is not necessarily some mytherical, etheric place where God is sitting on some throne with some staff, and he's basically watching over humans and with this iron rod and telling us, oh, if you don't obey me, I'm going to punish you. This concept of this place is what is because of our language. Mm-hmm. So I always have to say that so that people can understand heaven just really means the sky. And these beings came from the heaven, the sky, and they came here. And this is why we know this, because there's this famous Sumerian tablet called the Sumerian Kings List. And on the Sumerian Kings List, it says those, the Anunnaki, which means those from heaven. It means those from heaven to earth came. And in these Sumerian tablets, which are in the British Museum, and I actually physically went to the British Museum and I saw it, it says, and the kingship was lowered from heaven to earth, and the kingship was in Eridu. So Eridu is actually in today Iraq, which is in an area called Mesopotamia. And these tablets document some beings that ruled for very, very long times. So you call them the 8 immortal kings. And these beings ruled for a total of 241,200 years. So the Anunnaki you can classify in today's society would be the politicians, the prime ministers, the presidents, the aristocrats, the central bankers, the people that are the real movers and shakers in our society, you can classify them as the Anunnakis because they're like ones that are governing us. Then the Gigi or Gigi in some pronunciations are more like us, the working class, the blue collar, the train drivers, the fishermen, the people that cut your lawn, the people that clean your pool, the worker class, right? So the reason why I say that is because when you start to use certain terms, people start to get confused. So when I give analogies, it's easy for people to understand, okay, the Anunnaki are just like the ruler class and the Agigi are the workers. So what happened is the Agigi were doing the work according to the Sumerian Tablets and the Atrahasis in particular for 3,600 Earth years or one shar. And what happened is that the Agigi got fed up because the work is hard. You know, they're in the mines in Africa, mining for gold, creating these dams, dikes, and doing dredging hard work, even today. And they said, listen, to the Anunnaki, we're tired of this. We didn't come here to be slaves. So in the Anunnaki pantheon, there are 7 main gods, 7 main rulers. And the head god, as they call themselves, is called Anu. And he was the king of the planet Nibiru, because according to the tablets, these beings came from what we call today planet X, from Nibiru. And this planet has an elliptical revolution around the sun and our solar system. So it doesn't follow the trajectory and the cycle of the Earth and the other planets. It is an elongated, so it comes in and out. So when they so Anu is the king of Nibiru, and he had 2 sons. One son was from a consort called Enki, and one son, who was the younger son, was from his Anu's half sister. Now, in Anunnaki tradition, they marry in the bloodline, so they marry their half sisters. This is where in the royal families on the earth and the aristocrats marry in that circle. So that practice of keeping the bloodline together came from there. And it is actually proven that 45 out of the 46 presidents of the United States actually come from, I can't remember the exact name of the king, but it's a 12th century king in England, 11 something. It's not King Harold, but the king that was in that time, one king. All of the presidents of the United States descend from him in some form. There was only one that didn't. So now you see, I'm trying to make the connections for people to see how behaviors of old are still carried on today, right?
Yeah.
So what it is now is that Enki and Enlil always had beef between one another because Anunnaki rules state that it is the son of the half sister of the king that would be the crown prince. And Enki was the firstborn, but Enlil was the secondborn, but he came from the full royal bloodline. Now, what that did is that created a lot of beef between them. And the allegory is that it kind of created this dualistic sort of consciousness that we have in terms of right wing, left wing, right? So you see in all countries, there's always like this duopoly, this uniparty, right? So you see, I'm trying to show people now where these systems that we have today on Earth are coming from. So what happened is that Enki, he was a master geneticist and scientist. And when the Agigi went to Enlil's house and they were going to go to war with him, Enki came and said, look, let us come up with a solution. And what we're going to do is we're going to take, he proposed creating beings, because Enlil wanted to use machinery, but Enki was like, no, let us use an existing hominid species that is on Earth. Let's mix our DNA with it. The exact words were, we will mix our essence, which is basically DNA, and we will produce a worker class. Now, the original plan was to only have this being that was going to be created to be smart enough to take orders, but not too smart to question the authority. because they just wanted slaves, right? They wanted worker bees to just take orders and go. Now, in the story, what ended up happening is that it was quite difficult to actually create this hybrid. And they did many, many experiments, plant and animal hybrids, plant and animal and plant, all kinds of stuff. And they were using like these crystal jars to try to do the experiments. And it just wouldn't work. So what happened is that Enki decided to change things and he used a clay jar, right? And this is where the story in the of Genesis in the Bible talks about, and God said, let us make man in our own image, and he used clay. But in fact, the original tablets say that they use clay jars with the mixture of the Anunnaki DNA and the hominid DNA. So what happened now is that after this first being was created, because it became a stable being, they found that it was like a mule. It couldn't reproduce, and clonation, and that's exactly what it says in the tablets. They were cloning the beings, but it was taking too long. So what happened is that Enki further engineered the DNA so that they could procreate. Now, what ended up happening is that this actually started to work, and Enlil took a pair for himself and put them in the Garden of Eden, Edin. This is how it is spelled in the tablets, which is the Garden of Eden. Now, the Greek word for the garden, I can't remember off the top of my head now, but it basically means, I think it's called pariosio from memory, but it actually means enclosed area, enclosed garden. So in the tablets, it says that the garden was actually, it was basically an open laboratory where the males would have a specific time to go and have sex with the females specifically for procreation purposes. So during our modern history, when the conquistadors conquered the planet, the last 500 years, they practiced the exact same techniques that were taught to them, because the conquistadors are the descendants in some form or fashion from the Anunnaki, which I will further explain. So I'm just trying to show people how all of the practices and habits we have don't come from modern time. They are much, much older. So it specifically talks about the slaves would tend to the garden in the Garden of Eden, right? And basically now, where when you read other further books, like in the book of Joshua, Eve taught Adam that the God in the Garden of Eden was not really the God of the universe or the creator of the universe, right? So what happened now is that Enki, because he basically is our father, he created us, and he saw how the conditions were. So and again, because he was against his brother, he went and taught humanity that, hey, this guy who says he's God, he isn't really the creator of the universe. I am the one that created you. And in the myth of Adapa, he actually tells Adapa, which is another Sumerian tablet, that I created you the best of the Anunnaki, right? So basically, because now he had the royal bloodline, he was half, but he considered him part of them, right? Because he's his father. And this created a lot of conflict, because humanity started to realize that they were slaves. And this is where the story in the Garden of Eden of the serpent and the apple really just represents the consciousness, and the serpent was really Enki, right? Because we know that because signs and symbols are what rule the world, and these deities, that as they call themselves, always had certain symbology, and one of Enki's symbols was the snake, right? And the snake represents in many cultures as the giver of consciousness and the giver of life, right? So what it is now is that caused a massive rift in the whole structure that they were trying to build, because you had some humans now that started to realize that their slaves, and they were naked. They were both naked physically, but also naked spiritually and in consciousness, right? So one of the things I would like to tell the people is that everything in the Bible is not the entire truth, but they're true. True in the sense that and some of it is just blatant fabrication. So everything can't be taken literally, but things are taken sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively, and sometimes it's a bit of both, right? So because the Bible is written in code, and you have to be able to crack the code in order to unlock the information. So what we had now is that we had these two sort of like bloodlines, the Enki faction and the Enlil faction. And this has actually been playing out in our entire civilization. So what happened is when humanity realized that they were basically enslaved, the rift that it caused, what happened is that the Enki decided to teach humanity a lot of the hidden arts and give us consciousness and stuff. But during that process, what happened is that there was a great flood. And it actually says on the Sumerian Tablets that the flood came when the rule was in Shurupak. And Shurupak is an actual place. We found Shurupak in Iraq. From memory, I think it is 1920 or something like that. And there were tablets that actually confirmed that the place that they were excavating was called Shurupak. And the interesting thing about that story is that it was a team of both, or is it 1930? One of the two. It was a team of both American and German archaeologists. And just as they were about to give up, they ended up finding Shurupak because the first strata was very high to the soil. And then they dug and they dug and they dug. So they had 3 levels, 3 stratas. So the second strata, because they were trying to find the Shurupak, they had to dig, I think it was like 30 feet below where they found remnants of another civilization. So what it does is that it confirms that there was an event, most likely a flood, that brought a lot of strata on top of the civilization, because they dug for so long, so deep, that they almost gave up. And then when they found Shurupak now and they found the tablets, it was confirmed. So the places that, what that does now is that confirms that the Sumerian tablets talk about places that have been discovered with tablets confirming the location of the place, right? Mm-hmm. So then now what happened is that after that flood, then they decided to restart humanity. Now, there's a very interesting story in the Atrahasis, which talks about Ziusudra, who is also known as Utanapishtim. And the story is basically the Noah story in the Bible, because when the Anunnaki discovered that there was going to be this great flood, they decided not to tell humans because they wanted to wipe out humanity. So there's been this plan from the beginning to cull humanity and try to wipe us out, right? Which is actually going on in present day, right?
Oh, yeah.
So when what happened is that Enki, he received a dream from Galzu, which is the equivalent of like an angel for them, because Galzu was supposed to be like this sage in the Anunnaki belief system that is like a messenger from God. He would be like one of the angels that we have in our religion. And in the dream, Galzu told Enki to basically to save humanity. He told him to get Ziusudra, aka Noah, to build a vessel. They didn't call it an ark, they called it a vessel. And it appears that the vessel was circular, and it could have been, from the way you look at the text, sort of like a flying saucer shape. It looks like, it describes it like that. And he said to seal it so that it would be able to be submerged, so there would be no water ingress. So what happened is that he went to where Ziasuja was sleeping, and he spoke behind a wall, a wailing wall, so that Ziasuja wouldn't see him, so that he could keep the promise to the Anunnaki of not telling them. But he broke the promise in the sense we told him, but Ziasuja didn't see his face because he didn't know who it was, right? This is where the story of God speaking through the wall to Noah comes from, right? Right. So when Ziasudra, or Utanapishtim, as he's also called, built the vessel, then the flood came. And then after the flood came, they restarted humanity again. And this is where you saw, so basically on the Sumerian tablets, you see that you have, to give people context, you have kings like Alulim, he ruled for 28,800 years. Alingar, he ruled for 36,000 years. And Luana ruled for 42,200 years. And then Ubaratutu, who was the last one, ruled for 18,600 years. And he was the father of Utanapishtim, who was basically Noah. And then we find that in the Epic of Gilgamesh. So after the flood, then when they started to reseed humanity, they further tweaked our DNA, and they kept our telomeres and they fused chromosome 2. And this has actually been proved by modern day science, where science is saying, they discovered this, I think, around 2012, that genetic modification is not natural. It would take millions and millions of years to occur. And they're saying that it occurred circa 200,000 years. So remember, the Anunnaki came here about 450,000 years ago. The flood happened after 241,200 years, which is giving you around 209 circa thousand years. And science is saying that modification took place about 200 to 250,000 years ago. So you see how it's all lining up now, where what myth or tales is showing that is quite possible to be what actually happened. Now, we weren't actually there physically, so we can't say 100% certainty, but the dots are lining up to be very, circumstantial together, all together to say, well, it makes a lot more sense than what we've been taught at schools, right?
Yeah, there's a
When
lot
we
more
look at the
proof out
evidence.
there too as to what you're discussing then.
Yeah, I have a lot more proof. So
yeah,
what happened is that after then, they restarted civilization again. This is where things start to get really airy-fairy in the sense of all the religions, government, money, all of these things were put in place because Enlil said that basically he is going to design a system that will have humanity enslaved forever. And when you read further, these systems are what I call the three main religions of the world, which are the religion of money, the religion of government, and organized religion. And the reason why I call them religions is that, first thing first, the behavior of all of these followers is exactly the same as when you try to push back against the narrative. Let's take the people that are statists and believe in government. If you try to show people that, the state is an unnecessary evil, the state is oppressive, and the state does nothing for you, they're just going to become very, very defensive, very argumentative, and it could get physical depending on the rhetoric that is going back and forth between people, right? Mm-hmm. And no matter how much evidence you show, they will not believe you. Take a religious person, a person that is a Jew, Muslim, Christian, it doesn't matter, right? They're all the same. You give them evidence or you push back against their belief systems, it can get violent pretty quickly, right? Surely will get tempers are aggravated, right? The exact same way. And then people that will do anything for money, when you try to show them certain things about the system and money, how it keeps you enslaved, it's the same thing because money has become their God, right? This is why it says the love of money is the root of all evil. It's not that money is bad, it's the love, that you do anything for money. So these three religions, as I call them, are what really have created the matrix to create the society that we have today. And what happened is that the Anunnaki, after that time, gradually withdrew to be in the public domain. Because when you look at the Sumerian tablets and then you look at biblical scriptures, we have places like Babylon, which was in Mesopotamia. And a lot of this seems to come out of Babylon. So this is why money is called Babylonian magic. We know that the first religions appear to come out of Babylon. And the religion that came out of Babylon, some people are not going to like this, but it was actually Judaism, right? And Moloch, aka Baal, Beelzebul, Marduk, and Marduk is the name of the entity in the Sumerian tablets. He's also Amun-Ra, or Ra for the Egyptians. So he seems to be the god that is ruling everything at the moment. He went to war with the Anunnaki twice. And these are described in these tablets, and they are called pyramid wars. And we know this because there are places like Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan, where you have people that are basically being vitrified because they drop nuclear bombs. And the buildings where these bombs were dropped, basically they're made of like sand, glass. They've been vitrified, so they've turned into like the outside is glass. And when you scratch the surface, underneath the soil is glass. And people are still laying in their stairwells, in the floor, next to animals, holding on to children. You can Google this, right? Mohenjo-Daro. They're just all like incinerated skeletons are there. And when you go and measure the radiation level is much higher than normal. When you go to Egypt as well, which was where another one of the pyramid wars took place, the same thing. When you scratch the surface underneath the sand, it's glass. And again, the levels of radiation are much higher than what it would be for normal. So he went to war. In the Sumerian tablets, it says that he went to war with them, and they dropped nuclear weapons on him to try to kill him, but he didn't. So there was a story in the Sumerian tablets which is where the story of Lot comes from in the Bible, where they went to drop bombs on Sodom and Gomorrah. But think about it, brimstone and fire. If you think about when you drop the nuclear bomb, the catastrophic outcome that comes, brimstone and fire, right? So what it was is that that story is the story of when they tried to kill Marduk, but he escaped. And what happened is that nuclear bomb drop is what wiped out the Sumerians according to the tablets, because there was the nuclear wind, it blew. And when it blew, it just basically killed out everyone. So that society, according to the tablets, was wiped out, right? So we had this battle for power going on. Us humans were always in the middle. And they also had children with the hominid species, the humans that they created. So this is where the story in the Bible, it talks about the sons of God had sex with the daughters of man. And remember that they said that the Anunnaki means those from heaven to earth came. So they came from heaven, where God is supposed to be, quotation marks. They came to earth and had women. Marduk, he was the chief offender. He's the one that actually started it, because to put it in layman's terms, he was like, well, you all have wives. We here working. We ain't got no wives, so we want women. So he broke the tradition and he married an earth wife. And then everybody else followed him. This is where and they were on Mars, according to the Sumerian tablets. It was about 200 of them that were on Mars, which is the story that was captured in the book of Enoch. It says that the Watchers came to earth and had sex with the daughters of man, and there were 200 of them. And they said that Azazel all blame must be given to Azazel for teaching humans war. He taught the women how to face paint, which is makeup. He taught them agriculture and other stuff as well. But they said that all sin must be attributed to Azazel.
Mm.
And he basically made himself God, and he anointed himself on high and called himself Gadriel. Gadriel, take off the rel, you have Gad. Gad became God. So this is why he's the God of this world. So you see, there's always been this battle for power and supremacy in the Anunnaki, because Marduk is Enki's son, and then Enlil is his uncle. And he was always pushing back against the Enlil faction because he felt that his father was didn't get his birthright. So he took it upon himself to wage war against the other side. And then even at times waging war against his father's people, because he just got consumed by the power. It's like the story with the Ring of Solon in the Lord of the Rings. Basically, there would be one ring to rule it all, and he got consumed by the power. He was power hungry. And what happened is that because they now had sex with the humans, and they created, in the Bible it says, and in the Book of Enoch, the Nephilim, which are the half-breeds, that bloodline is the bloodline that currently rules Earth. This is why all of those people that basically rule the world, the prime ministers, the presidents, the royal families,
Rothschilds,
all of them date back their bloodline to Mesopotamia and the Anunnaki. This is why they think that they have a divine right to rule. And because Marduk is a psychopath, he just wants to have total submission of humanity, which is why they have done event after event after event to push us further and further to total submission. Because this is why we had the pandemic 4 years ago, because they're getting ready that they want to have us like complete total slaves, where, you know what I mean, they can read our thoughts, they can send thoughts to our brains, they can control us, and it all comes from these bloodlines, which are fighting against one another, with human beings being the pawns, the prize that's being fought over.
And that's why they can, create like Agenda 2030, and they have timelines for that. And even with like Event 201 and all those, they've been doing those since after 9/11. They've been doing those tabletop exercises. There's so many that they've done. Modi SARS, Crimson Contagion. I mean, I don't need to tell you. I'm sure you know about all of them.
Yes, and the reason is that one thing that people need to understand is that we humans, we are being used. We are basically doing the work for them, because in reality, they're mighty and they have a lot of technology and they're powerful, but they can't actually rule us with an iron fist like that. They have to rule from behind and use manipulation, coercion, and distraction in order to get us to comply, because they need us to police ourselves. Because if you think about it, everything is all about predictive programming in the movies, in the television, and what's not, where they're seeding our consciousness with certain ideas. And then what they've done is that they have this system of divide and conquer. And by separating us, okay, it was man versus woman, then it's straight versus homosexual, then it's black versus white, then it is tall versus short, then it is have money versus no money. There's always this like duality system that they're trying to impose on us, because what they know is that if they keep putting us in boxes and smaller boxes and smaller boxes and smaller boxes, ultimately what it does is that it separates you from source. Because even the Anunnaki know that there is a creative universe. They know that it's not them, because even in one of their tablets it says that Uh, they acknowledge that they will pay for their actions because the creator of the universe will not be very happy of what they've done. They actually admitted that. So they are even saying that they know they can pay for their sins. But because they're very consumed with power, the ego is strong. And think about it, right? We actually, because we are their cousins, their bloodline, we have the same attributes as them. Because the tablets talk about they're getting upset, having sex with Enki. He couldn't keep it in his pants. He was basically shagging all the human girls. Like he had like tons and tons of women, man. Like he just couldn't stop, right? So I don't know if this is where most men have this thirst from. I don't know, but he certainly was thirsty, hands down. And we have all of their attributes, which is it even says that, and God said, let us make man in our own image. But even look at that word, let us. Christians like to say that it is God talking in the plurality form, because we can also talk in plural form, but that's not what the tablets said. The tablets said that it was the gods, because Elohim in Hebrew is plural for gods. El meaning God, and M is plural, Elohim. But a better translation is really the mighty ones or the powerful ones, but the loose translation is God. And it says gods. And then when you look at the original Greek text, it actually indicates that it was more than one being. And the Sumerian tablets say that it was Ninhursag, Enki, and Ningashida who actually did experiments to create the hybrid, which is what we have become. So everything that we have in our world today is not something that just started. For example, in the Sumerian tablets, they tried to kill us out at one point in time through famine. And they said, basically, they told one of the quotation marks gods to stop the rains from falling. Well, we know that we have technology now for weather manipulation that we can actually do that.
Right? No, definitely, all the time.
Good. And they also talked about spraying the air with something. Well, we have chemtrails now, don't we?
Oh,
we have cloud seeding, right?
Big time.
So the point is that history may not repeat itself, but it rhymes, and everything that's happening has happened before. That same story with the famine, it got so bad that humans started to eat their children to survive. Yes, it's very heartbreaking when you read these stories. And what they're doing now is that they're creating a famine artificially because the pandemic broke the supply chain. They started to pay off farmers and not produce. They started to bring in these nitrogen rules for fertilizer and all that carry on. Then they basically made food more expensive. So then they started to destroy all the processing plants, especially in the United States, for producing food and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So all of these are sabotage tactics that they've done to bring back famine again, because they want to cull us, because in their opinion, there are too many of us. And they want a small amount of slaves that are easy to manage and will just do as they're told. So they brought in these systems to wipe out humanity. It's just that simple.
And the food itself is, so much of it is GMO. And what's so sad about here in America is that every corner, fast food, and people are lining up to get their fast food. Mind-boggling.
Don't even get me started on food, because I think it's criminal. Like, for example, sugar. Whenever I say this, people laugh, but sugar is actually more addictive than cocaine. Sugar is actually worse for the body than cocaine. Let me explain why. In normal circumstances, if a human does cocaine, they may do it maybe here or there, maybe on the weekend, enjoy themselves, what's not, right? But look at sugar. Sugar is used every single day. Furthermore, just look at children. Look at how hyperactive children become
Mm-hmm.
when they consume large amounts of sugar. All of this ADHD and attention disorder, this and the next, and all these syndromes that children have, most of it comes from the food and sugar. And sugar is absolutely terrible for the body. No, look at this. Chocolate itself is actually very good, but you can't get benefits of the chocolate because of the sugar content.
Yeah.
And if you go and look at a normal chocolate bar, most likely we're talking about 40% plus percent per serving is sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go and take a Hershey's bar that's 100 grams weight, and it would say it's about 45 to 48 grams per serving, excuse me, which means that just under 50% of the entire chocolate bar is sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So the positives that is in the cacao, which is chocolate, are completely overridden by the sugar. And what it was is that sugar was never native in our diets. When you go back to ancient times, even hunter-gatherer times, there was nothing sugar. There was salt, because salt was used to preserve food, and you can salt it and just put it down because there was no refrigerators,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there was no sugar. Now, one could argue they would use honey, but honey is a lot more natural than it is from sugar. And the type of honey it would have been organic honey, because all of the flowers and everything were a lot different, because everything is GMO, like you said. Everything is manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
Everything isn't real, right? Then you have things like the Manuka honey, which is the most expensive honey in the world. Very, very good, right? They use different things. They use more natural things. Now, the sugar cane itself, you can eat the sugar cane and drink the juice. That is fine. But the actual making of the sugar, it changes the chemical composition of the actual original juice. So the sugar itself is actually bad. And white sugar is the worst because it's actually bleached.
Mm-hmm.
Just like flour. Flour isn't inherently bad because our ancestors have eaten flour, maize for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
But what do we have now? White flour. That's actually bleached flour. So all of the proper nutrients in the flour are taken out, right? So it actually becomes bad. Then if you look at GMO, the thing is that America is one of the worst places for food, because
Definitely.
almost like 90% of everything is like GMO.
Mm-hmm.
And like, for example, we have like, I mean, listen, I am a fitness trainer. I understand a little bit about food and nutrition. And a vegan diet isn't necessarily a bad diet, but there's one catch that people fail to realize. 90% of all soybeans on the market is GMO.
GMO. Mm-hmm.
So this is my point here now. So if Brazil and the United States control 60% of the market, and 90% of the soybeans in the United States is GMO. Mm-hmm. In fact, it is now becoming a trend to get non-GMO soybeans in the United States, but it's very hard to do, and it's much more expensive, right?
Yep.
Now, well, you can actually get protein and stuff from the soybeans. It is a counterproductive move because, like I said, chocolate is good, but the sugar overrides the properties, the good properties of the cacao by having in it. Again, with like all these soy products. Yes, you can get protein from the soy products, but all of that is being overridden by the fact that it's actually GMO.
Yeah.
Right?
Same thing with seed oils too. Like organic products that have seed oils in them. Seed oils are bad for you.
Extremely bad. Extremely bad. And the thing about it, right, is that if you look back at food way back when, we never used seed oils. What we used was things like what the old people would call lard, which was animal fat.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember as a boy, You know, like my grandmother, my great grandmother were talking about lard,
Yeah,
right?
my grandma too. Yeah.
And that's like duck fat, that's animal fat, you know, fat from the from beef, you know, fat from pigs, etc. They were using the animal fat, right? To fry with. Fat in itself is actually very good for the body because a lot of nutrients that comes out of our food are water soluble and you can't absorb them without the fat in the body. So the fat allows the nutrients to be absorbed in the body. So if you look at now what they've been telling us for the last what, from my memory, like 20 years. I mean, and I'm a young man, but it may have been going off further than that. Fat free, fat free, fat free, fat free.
Yeah.
Now, when you pull the fat out of the food lacks flavor. So
Hmm.
what do they do to give it flavor? Salt and sugar. Now, salt now is another one that is very contentious. Salt is actually good, but if you have table salt, that is trash. That's terrible
Yeah.
because table salt is a bunch of chemicals. So if salt that's good to use, it would be rock salt, sea salt, Himalayan salt.
Hmm.
These are the best salts. One of the three, I personally like Himalayan salt, but any of those three is very good. But table salt is rubbish. Just throw it in the
Hmm.
bin, right? So all of these are things that these Anunnaki bloodlines have induced into our system, consciousness, and our way of life in order to make us sick because there's no money in dead people and there's no money in healthy people. There's
Hmm.
money in the middle. So people have to just be sick enough to pay their bills and taxes, and to buy pharmaceutical products, but they can't be too sick that they're going to die because the customers die. So there's no more money. You
Hmm.
get a one-off
Good
fund
point.
set of funds and then no more. So all of these things are linked, right? And it all comes back from these Anunnaki beings, even the system of
Hmm.
government. All our whole entire system is built on the Sumerian civilization. And but at the same time, what's happened is that that system, while it was a decent system, excuse me, has been infiltrated over and over and over and over to try to um, corrupt the purity of the good things that were given to us. Because to be fair, the Anunnaki gave us very good things: agriculture, building. You know what I mean? The social fabric of society through the Sumerians they gave us. But what happened now is that these beings just like were bloodthirsty and power hungry, and they just wanted to have more of a control system so that we're boot on the neck type of slaves, right?
Hmm.
So this is why things are really, really hard now, you know?
I know exactly what you mean. And then they give us things to make us feel like we're free, like sports and such. I mean, the only sports I watch nowadays are soccer. I mean, I used to be obsessed with NBA, NFL, you name it. And I'm like, this is all a show. This is not, using the best of my time.
It's all bread and circus. It's all
Hmm.
bread and circus.
Yeah.
And we see all and the thing is that the American empire is actually on its decline and the system is
Oh yeah.
breaking. Now, there's something that a lot of people may not really have realized and understood. But in September 2020, something interesting was happening in our economic system. And there's something called the overnight Fed window. And overnight, the Fed was pumping, I think from memory, it was $100 million into the system. And what happened is that after a month, it ended up being about $1 trillion, right? Over
Hmm.
$1 trillion. And what happened is that people were starting to realize that things were not really that good. So what ended up happening is that the whole pandemic started to come out of the background, because remember we had event 201 in October 2020. Then the whole Wuhan shenanigans started to come out in December 2021. So what it was now is that it's the focus, the shift of focus started in October to stop people looking at the system, because the system was about to break, right? Because $1 trillion is a lot, right? And this is like undercover dark money that is not being reported, but it's still having an effect, right? So then the pandemic, what it did is that it allowed them to print money openly in front of us instead of printing it at night and injecting it with the system to mask over the fact that the system was broken. So what happened now is that they created massive inflation in the system to affect us, because they want to pull back in the curtain, or they want to pull back in everything, but they have to do it in a systematic way where you deflect and then you project. So you deflect in one area, project in another. That thing that people were focusing on is still happening, and it's like a snowball that is just gradually getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is where we are now. We're at a stage now where, like, we need to really start preparing, because a lot of crazy stuff is going to start happening, and we're seeing it, right? Like, I mean, look at our political system. We having people that are saying, and I'm a political atheist, so I have no dog in the fight. So for me, left ring, right ring is all the same bird, right? So doesn't really make a difference. But what I would say is that it is more obvious on the left side that these people are psychopaths. The right are a little bit better at hiding their psychopathic tendencies, but the left are just like, you know what I mean? Like, look at us, right? We're like this, but then they use divergent tactics of, you know what I mean, with all the isms, the transgenderism, the racism, all these isms, these cultisms to doctor it up. But the thing is, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. You can wrap it up, but it's still a smelly fish, right? And this is basically what we have, right? And this is the thing, right? I think that the left are just more honest about what they are, right, than necessarily right.
And the sad thing too here in the US, I don't know if you've noticed this, but because of the genocide, going on in Palestine and AIPAC, people coming out on TikTok, showing that AIPAC is funding both sides. People are waking up, but they're still sucked into the political game. It's like if both sides are the same coin, you would think they'd say, okay, I'm not going to be political anymore, but they're not.
Dude, we just had a classic example of exactly what you said in two countries, United Kingdom and France.
Okay, yeah.
Now, I'm from the United Kingdom, so for me, I thought it was absolutely mad. So let me explain for people. So again, a two-party system, basically a duopoly, uniparty, Labour and Conservatives. So Labour are the left wing and the Conservatives are the right wing. Now, the Conservatives were in power for 14 years, and they had a manifesto that said they're going to control immigration to the tens of thousands. Dude, 5 times they had 5 manifestos in the 14 years, and each time immigration went up. Each time, right? So then Labour, which is open pro-immigration. So let me caveat and say that I believe immigration is good, but it should be controlled immigration where it's skills-based, where if you have skills and talents that are required in the country, then you go and you can contribute because you're adding value, right? And the person that is immigrating is actually a win-win, because the person's immigrating will get better salary, better conditions than they're in their home country. And that country and the company is benefiting because they're getting the skills and expertise they want. So I'm not anti-immigration. I'm just anti-open immigration. Just come. So the Conservatives have basically been a left-wing Labour Party. Like everything they've done. So it's like they say very good words, but when you look at everything they've done, it is literally a left-wing agenda. It is mad. So then now you had Nigel Farage, he created a part, well, he didn't create it, but he took over the I think it's the Revolt party. And they are saying, well, listen, we're gonna be proper right wing where we have controlled immigration, it's on a skills base. Let's be business focused because business is what drives the economy. People can immigrate by default because opportunities are being created, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They got so afraid of his party that people that complained about how bad the system is under conservatives voted for the Labour Party, which is basically very open about what they're going to do to raise taxes, just flood the country with more immigrants.
Oh, yeah.
And people voted for that. And I'm like,
yeah,
just exactly what you said. The indoctrination and the brainwashing is so good that the things that people were pushing back against, they ended up voting to get more of. It happened in France over the weekend.
Yeah.
Marine Le Pen. Again, I'm not a political guy, but
no,
what I would say is that what she was saying made more sense than what the other parties were talking about. And I have a friend that lives in France. She lives in Paris, actually. And she said, Todd, Paris is freaking bad. I've seen videos, but she said, Todd, you go down the street is unsafe. You having all these immigrants. And she's Black as well, but she's saying, but these people ain't got no culture. They ain't got no decency, no morals. They pulling at women, literally walking and groping women on the street. You know what I mean? It is next level. And it's almost like Paris is the streets are just taken over with tanks, right? And Macron, under his government, have raised taxes, and the French have a particular thing about the retirement age. So they push back really hard against that because French used to retire, I think, 62 or something like that. And now I think it's up to 64 from memory. So all of the policies that they pushed back against Macron for, they put in a left-wing government that will do even more than what Macron was saying. And I'm like, and then you see videos of these young people that are celebrating that, oh, we won. We're just better than you. We're not going anywhere. You're racist. You're defeated. But in a year or two, those same people will be back in the streets protesting for the conditions that they voted for. So, I mean, okay, well, again, while I don't support politics, I could understand that people out of frustration would have voted for Nigel Farage's party and Marine Le Pen out of frustration. But that didn't happen.
Not at all.
People voted for left-wing because I don't know if they want more free stuff or is it just because it's a religion where they don't care what the leaders in the religion are going to do. They're just been programmed to hate the other side.
Yeah, so, it seems like that here at least.
So it's almost a situation where you cut your nose to spoil your features, right? So it is mad. It is mad that we have this sort of. I think that the main issue is self-hate, and I think that what's happened is that the powers that shouldn't be have, because they've taken us so far away from source that we don't realize our divinity and our connection. We are self-hating. So because we hate ourselves, we hate other people. And the reason why I say that is that you can't give someone something that you don't already have. So if you hate yourself, you will hate other people. Because if you don't love yourself, you can't give your other self love, another person love, because you can't give someone something you don't already have. So I think what has happened is that Yuri Burinov, what's it called? Burinov? The the defector from Russia, from the KGB,
Oh yeah.
Yuri
Okay.
Bosmanov, I think his
Something
name
like
is.
that. Yeah.
He said basically is demoralization, normalization, crisis, and then the other one I can't remember, but basically that's when you make it how it is, right?
Mhm.
And sorry, is demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. And we're in the normalization stage now, where basically they're getting us accustomed to how the new world will be. Because this is why they were talking about the new normal, the new normal. This is why
Mhm.
that scene was very
Oh
popular,
yeah.
right? So there's a
Mhm.
lot of brainwashing, and Yuri said that it takes about 2 to 3 generations to get to that level of consciousness, because you need because the ones that are in the universities now, they have to leave, and the ones that are going into university are going to get the pure indoctrination, and then they will have children, and then they will indoctrinate their children, right? And then by that time now, they end up having children themselves. So it's 2 to 3 generations. So I think he said it's between 30 to 40 years that it takes to completely brainwash a society, you know?
Yeah.
So
That that makes perfect sense.
we're in some real serious times right now, you know?
And you heard about the other thing in UK, I'm sure. The how if you have a car like 7 years or older, you get taxed every time it moves. Did you hear about
Yeah,
that?
dude, this is nuts. So I can share a personal story with you.
Hmm.
So I went to holiday on holiday when it was 4 years ago. And I spent 6 months out of the country. So when I came back, I was driving my car. My car is a diesel, or it was a diesel. And long story short, I was talking to this girl, and she lives. Well, she said, "Oh, Todd, let's go to the gym on Saturday." I was like, "Cool." So before I left, I remember that because we had something called the congestion charge, or we still have it actually. And basically, congestion charge is that between 7 and 7, Monday to Friday, you had to pay, I think it was £12 to go into that zone.
Hmm.
Excuse me, it was basically central London. So because it was Saturday, I was like, yeah, cool, no problem. Because the gym is in central London. Literally, the gym is in London Bridge. So went, picked her up, and then we went to the gym and all that kind of stuff. And 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the post. And it's a fine. And the fine was £120. But listen to this. While I was away on holiday, they introduced this thing called the ultra low emission zone,
Yeah, that's
which is
it.
24 hours a day, which is
Hmm.
basically a congestion charge, because the congestion charge is central London, and the ultra low emission zone incorporates central London and the outskirts up to Heathrow Airport, right?
Hmm.
So I went into central London thinking that the congestion charge is down, and ended up having to pay £120 fine because I was in the ultra low emission zone, because my car is a diesel, and
Hmm.
there's this massive push now to get rid of diesel vehicles. So what you're saying is true. And
Hmm.
if you want to go to Heathrow, you have to avoid certain roads, because Heathrow, um, part of Heathrow is in the ultra low emission zone. And what they're doing is they're forcing people now to get rid of diesel, because they're saying that diesel is bad. But I remember when I first went to England, there was a big push to get people to get diesel cars because it was more fuel efficient than the
Hmm.
petrol. Because you used to get maybe about 20 miles more to the gallon, right? So this is
Hmm.
why, and what they did then is that because people started to buy more diesel vehicles, they increased the price of diesel. So, like in most other countries, diesel is actually cheaper than petrol. But in the UK, diesel is more expensive
Yeah.
than petrol. It's freaking mad, right?
Hmm.
And the taxes that we have on the diesel is some of the highest in the world, man. in the United Kingdom, because like from memory, we were paying like £1.30 for diesel
Okay.
and per liter, right?
Oh, a liter, yeah.
So that was about probably $1.80 per
Hmm.
liter in the States, which is mad, right? And our
Yeah.
cars are smaller because the fuel, the cost, the price of fuel is more expensive. So all of that is really linked to the kind of smart cities, and because we're very surveilled, so and they use number plate recognition with the CCTV cameras, so they
Yeah,
don't even
cameras are
need
up
to,
everywhere, right?
yeah, you don't need to like they don't need to stop you. They just record your reg when you go into the zone.
Hmm.
It's just like they have vehicle registration software in the police cars as well. So like in the UK, they they know if you've paid insurance or if your car has been taxed or not. Because if they once they're behind you and they're driving, this become or if they're in front of you, right? Because they're coming the other way, the
Hmm.
software in the computer reads the regs and it would just flash up and they would just pull you over. And you can lie as much as you want, but unless you paid it the same day where the system is not being updated, you're
Yeah.
nicked
Oh.
and you're going to get a fine. And you
Hmm.
get points on your license as well. Do you all get things like points on your
Oh yeah,
license?
we do in the US. I haven't, experienced it myself, but the only thing I've experienced is when I first moved here, I got shook down by the county sheriff for no reason. Just being a prick. Over by where I lived, I was cordial. I probably shouldn't have been, but then they just let me off with a warning, you know?
Dude, it is mad because you know, right, that if you are too smart, you are not allowed to be a policeman.
Oh, sure. That makes
No,
perfect
seriously.
sense.
No, seriously. If you have, I tell you, one guy, he said to
Hmm.
me that he wanted to be a policeman because his dad was a policeman. And when he did the evaluation, they said to him, "Nah, you should go to work in the FBI because, like, yeah, your IQ is at that level." He says, "How do you mean?" He says, "Well, we only look for a certain level, and it's between this and that." And basically, it was lower than his IQ,
Hmm.
right? So he was like, "That don't make sense." But I thought that I would be suitable because I'm above the threshold. He's like, "No,
Hmm.
if you want to get in law enforcement, you need to go to that level." So my point is that they only want people that are quite stupid, people that are programmable, people that, because there's an indoctrination again, right? That they give you. This is why you see most police in most countries have the same type of mentality and way of being. Obviously, not all, because there's some police that are genuine, where like they're quite respectful and they're fair, but the vast majority, you have like this ego trip, this like basically they were almost like the impression I get is like they were never the cool kids at school.
Hmm.
They were never the ones that got attention from girls, or maybe if it's a woman from boys,
Yeah.
and basically it's just for them to get that buzz that they never had when they were in school. But all of these are systems that the Anunnaki have, through their bloodlines, have introduced into
Hmm.
our society, which is a form of control. And it is really to just like, really, we are already in World War III, but
Hmm.
people don't really understand that. Is because the war is a war for your mind. It's a war on consciousness. And yes, you have like, stuff going on in Ukraine and but stuff going on in Israel, but those things are just to distract you from what they're really trying to do to them. They want to
Hmm.
steal your mind, because the ultimate goal of what is going on in the world is that they want you to upload your consciousness to cloud so
Yeah.
that you merge with
Big
the
time.
machine, that you
Hmm.
become the Borg, right?
Hmm.
Because this is where you have artificial intelligence. But there's the thing, we are what you call biological intelligence. And in fact, when we realize our divinity, we actually supersede and are better than the AI, because basically humans have the spark of divinity inside of them, which is basically the spark of God. because we're a fractal of God. We're a fractal of the source, because God, aka the source, universal consciousness, is the creator of all. And if the creator of all is everything, it means then that we are part of the creator, because you can't be of something and not be that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So all we are is that we are God, expressing ourselves in an individualized manner. Because if you think about it, God or source is everything. The plants are God, the trees are God, the animals are God. I am God, you are God. The only way for God to get the feedback from the universe is to create derivatives of himself, right? And the thing is, I even said himself because we're limited in English language, but God is really an it, because it's both male and female, because God is energy. So the only way for it to understand what's going on in the world is to create derivatives of himself, to give him the feedback on what's really going on in the world. Because think of it, they tell us that God is all-knowing, omnipotent, or omnipresent. So for that understanding to make sense, it would have to mean that God is everything, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So if the plants, the animals, the trees, humans, the planets are all God, that is how God will know about everything, because we are giving information back to source. But what has happened is that we have been misled to think that we're separate from source, and we are not source, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I like to describe this as to, like, okay, say you go to the beach, excuse me, and you take a cup and you put that cup in the water and you fill the cup. Is the water in the cup not the ocean?
It is.
It has the same attributes,
Mm-hmm.
same saline concentration, same everything. All it is that the cup is a vessel that's holding the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
but the ocean is all, right? Is the ocean, right? Because you can have the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, they're all the oceans, but in reality, they're all connected. It's all one ocean. It's just called different regions for to be able to locate where something is, but it's all the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of it like that, the spark of divinity or universal consciousness, God, is inside of the cup, which is inside of your physical being. So your body is just the outer expression of the spirit inside of you.
Mm-hmm.
But the spirit is still connected back to that same ocean, but that's the spirit inside of us through our physical vessel, the body, is expressing itself in an individual way. Because when we came into this world, we were given a name, a religion, and a nationality. We weren't allowed to choose any of these things. And that is what started our indoctrination. And that's what started to create the hologram that we have of ourselves, right? So this hologram that we've created is the self, but is actually the false self. And that self is the self that is really into the material world, into the physical world. And they feed the powers that shouldn't be, feed that self, all of the imagery, the propaganda, the religion, the fears, the traumas, all of these things which keep us focused on the outside instead of looking inside. This is why Christ says that my kingdom is not of this world. And he says the kingdom is within you. He also said it's outside of you. He says is in you and outside of you, because it's everywhere. But you find it here first, because again, if you can't find the kingdom in here, you can't find the kingdom out there, because you can't give someone something that you don't already have, because everything starts inside of you. All of the sages, the yogis, the ascended masters, all of them, they say the same thing. Buddha says that, the nirvana is basically found inside of you. Krishna talks about the same thing, right? having the Krishna consciousness, which is the same thing as the Christ consciousness, because Christos is Greek, Christ is Latin, and Krishna is Sanskrit. So when you translate Christos in Greek to Sanskrit, you get Krishna. And this is very well explained in the Bhagavad Gita, where he's talking about Krishna consciousness and telling us that we need to get rid of our attachments, because he says that the cause of all human suffering is attachments. And he told his student Arjuna that he needs to look at a piece of rock. Sorry, he needs to look at a piece of gold the same way he looks at a normal rock. He needs to be able to throw away the gold like he would throw away a rock. So there's no attachment. Because it's your attachment to the gold, he says, that will cause your suffering. So it's all these kind of things that we've been mistaught, and we've been taught to focus on the external instead of really focus on the internal, which is where you get all the peace, you get all the love, you get the happiness, you get the abundance, you get this light feeling where you can go with the flow. You can end up using more of your intuition. This is how you be able to manifest, because you're bringing it from outside of you. So you're attracting the things that you want to you. But what we have is a system that is making us focus on the next thing. It's like a carrot in front of us, and we're like donkeys just running, and we try to get that carrot.
Oh, yeah.
Carrot goes further, running, get that carrot, running and running. This is the system that they've created, you know?
Yeah. One thing before we end this that I wanted to ask you is, what is the reason behind all those, global leaders and such going to touch that wall in Israel? Do they get power from doing that, or is this all for show, or what's going on behind that?
Dude, that's a good question. And
Mhm.
what it appears is that their religion that they follow, whether we believe it or not, their belief system seems to have a power base in Jerusalem and at that particular place, because that, like, okay, let me go back a little bit. We know that Judaism was born in Babylon. We know that it came out of that. Even the Jewish texts confirm this. The text that people can't get their hands on confirm that. So, and now even in Judaism, there are two divisions of Jews. You have the Jews that are the ones that just follow the Torah, and then you have the Talmudic Jews. And the Talmudic Jews are the ones that appear to worship Marduk, because Marduk is the one that was the chief god in Babylon. And it appears from reading these texts that as Judaism was being formed, the higher level, the inner circle of Judaism were brought into the secret society of the cult that worshiped Marduk. And in this cult, this is where you get all of the child sacrifice, pedophilia, human trafficking, all of these heinous things. Those were initiations that were put into that religion, right? So what happened is that Judaism ended up being corrupted at the high levels. And we know that Jerusalem was one of the bases for where the Anunnaki were, because it's in Mesopotamia, right? All of that area is part of the Fertile Crescent. Now, in that area, you had the ziggurats, you have Mount Sinai. Now, Mount Sinai appears to be a place that is probably a launch pad for the spaceships that the Anunnaki had. And in that entire region, right, there's been a power struggle, right? And that wall seemed, because that wall is the second temple that was destroyed. And there seems to be some reverence that is paid still to that beginning wall, and that basically the old system that they had, because now they're building a third temple, right? Which is the harbinger now of what is to come. And this is why they sacrifice the red heifer to open that sort of like portal of energy and that bringing in, because they want to bring back their God, because they believe in something called salvation through sin. So they believe that the only way God will come back to earth or send his messenger, his Messiah, is if the earth is that bad, if the earth is that dark. So what they've said is that because this is our belief system, we are going to take it upon ourselves to make things bad so that God can come back. So things have to get that bad. So they believe that in them doing evil, they will be saved through sin. And that area where they go with the wall seems to be a very big connection to their religion, their inner religion that they're doing, because all of these things are very, very religious, but is at a high level that we don't get to see. We only see, because it looks weird where they go to this wall and they all, doing this, and we're like, you know what I mean? But if you look at the traditional Jews, when they're doing that, they have like a stone on top of their head.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually called a Kaaba. So this is actually has very much links to the Kaaba in Mecca for Islam, because basically all it is that is a representation of Remfran, which is the star that they worship, which is the hexagram, which is the symbol, which is really the Star of David, which was usurped, which is actually the hexagon that's on top of the planet Saturn. And Saturn appears to the planet that is pushing out this energy and then is transported from the moon to Earth, right? So the moon looks like it's a station that is what is creating the false matrix that we have here. And the energy seems to be coming from Saturn. And we know that these people were solar cult worshippers. It was all worshiping the sun. And who was the sun? Amun-Ra, Marduk. So Marduk, so this is why I say that these people are worshiping Marduk through the back door and don't even know it, right? They don't even know it. So for some reason, that wall, which was where the second temple was, seems to have some significant importance to them. I don't know why, but what I do know is that these signs and symbols rule the world, and that has to be some sort of like sign to their people that, yeah, hey, I'm in the club. That's what it really looks like to me.
Okay. Yeah.
Because like as that comedian said, it's a is it what's his name?
George Carlin?
Is it that's it. He says a big old club and you ain't in it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think he was the real deal too. At least I hope he was,
Oh yeah. He said a lot of facts that, and the thing is, this is why there's a war on comedy, because comedy is similar to the way Hollywood works, where when you put sci-fi on something, you bypass that part of the brain that would have critical thinking, and you think it is just entertainment, right? Now, the thing is with comedy, though, is that through laughter, you can actually get epiphanies, because laughter invokes a positive energy in the body. So bypassing the critical mind and getting into the subconscious mind, by you laughing at it, the more you were to hear comedy and the more you laugh, after a while, you can be like, hold on a minute, that's actually true, right? And then you end up having the cognitive dissonance part where it's like, excuse me, but my belief system, my religion is this, but this guy is actually saying true. So you have to battle now in yourself on which one you're going to do. Are you going to ignore what is the actual truth because it protects your belief system and your narrative? Or are you going to leave your belief system and narrative to actually embrace the truth? And this is why there's a war on comedy, because comedy is very good at subtly penetrating the subconscious, because through laughter, you will end up having like a realization. It may not happen immediately, but after a while, the more you hear comedy, especially if it's like hard facts like that, you're gonna have a aha moment where it's like, okay, this I'm laughing, but this is actually true, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff that people just don't want to admit, because in these religions, my friend, is people will literally lie to protect their belief system, because if they leave their belief system, it's too painful. And this is the society that we have today. So it's one of those where we need to put down religion, because fun fact for you, the word religion comes from the Latin word religare, which means to hold or to bind or to thwart forward progress of. So religion holds, binds, and thwarts the forward progress of its followers spiritually. You know, it holds them back spiritually, because religion is put as an intermediary between you and source. Because religion says you need to do these rituals, say these incantations, do these practices in order to get back to source. But in reality, you don't need religion, because according to Dolores Cannon, the first quotation marks Christians never called themselves Christians. They called themselves followers of the way. What that means is that Christ says, I am the truth, the way, and the life. He also said, I am the resurrection and the life. He said, basically, eat of my flesh, drink of my blood. Does that not mean literally? But he's like, eat these words. You know what I mean? Swallow this information I'm telling you. Do these things, and you will get enlightenment, right? Basically, he's saying, this is the blueprint. Do this, and you will get enlightenment. So that's why they call themselves followers of the way, because it was like a system on how to beat the matrix. Because basically, Christ came to hijack the matrix, right? He was like Neo in the movie. He came to crack the matrix, right?
Yeah.
Because he was the anomaly. But people don't see the allegory in these things in the movies, and basically they just see what they're told, and it's like, okay, that's what it is, and I'm just going to follow. I'm going to let someone else think for me. I'm going to relegate my thinking outside of me, and I'm going to follow because it's easy. I don't want to do any research. Just tell me what to do, Mark, and I'll just follow you. And that's because basically all these religions have injected a savior complex in us, because there's a savior. Christians think Jesus is coming back, but that word Jesus is not even his real name. His name was Yeshua or Yehoshua. And it took 1,600 years to develop into that, because it went from Yehoshua to Jesus, and Jesus is the Latinized version of Zeus. And Zeus in Greek means hail Zeus. Zeus was an extraterrestrial god, which is more linked to Enlil, right? So every time people are using the word Jesus, they're actually invoking hail Zeus without even knowing it. So what these Anunnaki have done is that they've found them ways to infiltrate each other's cults and religions through the back door, so that they can get veneration. Just like the word amen. Amen comes from Amun-Ra. Amun-Ra said that after your prayers and invocations, at the end, you say Amun, which became amen. Now, Amun-Ra is Marduk. So every time you say amen after you're praying, you're giving veneration to an extraterrestrial god, and in fact, the god of this world, who in fact is really what we would call Satan. Even that word Satan is a misnomer, because Satan means adversary. So we had many adversaries. Enlil was an adversary. Enki was an adversary. Ninurta was an adversary. So we had many Satans, right? This is why in Islam they call them shaitan. And there's not just one shaitan, there are many shaitans. So they understand that concept. But us, English speaking Western, we see Satan as just, oh, this character with a pitchfork, horns, glowing red, and he's the devil. But there's so many misunderstandings about that, because even the word Lucifer comes from the Latin word phosphorus, which phosphorus was Venus. Venus, according to the Sumerian Tablets, did a flyby. So what that means is that Venus was closer to Earth at one point in time in our celestial movement in the cosmos. And Venus today is still the brightest star in the sky. So if Venus was much, much closer to Earth, it meant that Venus would be the star of the morning, which was a sun. So you see, they've used a lot of trickery of words and changing meanings, translating to confuse us. So this is why, in fact, Lucifer isn't the root. When you look at the root, it's not really bad. It's not really the devil. It just means Venus, right? Because Venus was a star.
Yeah.
And it is a star, and it was a star of the morning. This is why Lucifer actually means the morning star, the light bearer, or the star of the morning. So I say all that to say that we've been really indoctrinated, brainwashed, dumbed down, and tricked to believe a lot of things that aren't really true. And this is why humanity is in the place it is now, because it is brother against brother, father against son, mother against daughter, because they've separated us to fight against one another, which makes it easy for us to control. And the more boxes you put us into, the easier it is. So even in the transgender movement, they got more 22 boxes inside of there. So those people are even being divided even further. Yeah. So it's all about division, divide, and conquer. And what we need to do is work on ourselves, and then also connect with people who are working on themselves, so that you can have support systems, because what is about to come is going to be very, very difficult and challenging. And no one's coming to save us. No one's coming to save us. So we have to save ourselves. Because even Jesus said, you know what I mean? Yeshua said, if they say I am here and over there, don't believe them. He's not coming back. But he says the Son of Man is coming back, which is us. We're the Son of Man. We become the Christ. And it's through our getting rid of fears and traumas and ascending to a high level of consciousness that we become the Christ. We save ourselves, and then we can save the world, because people will be touched, moved, and inspired by what we're doing to ourselves, and they'll pick up their cross and follow us, because we're all of one mind, one body, one spirit, one consciousness. And we're following the way that Yeshua came to show us. And once we do that, we'll be fine, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. If someone wants to reach out to you to get your coaching, how do they do that?
Thanks for that. So anyone I'm a fitness trainer by the day, but obviously I talk about these things as well. So anyone that's interested in getting into some awesome shape, summer's here, you want to burn some fat, build some muscle, you can hit me up at Adriano_246, or my name, Todd Cave, on Facebook. And I basically help coach your mind, body, and help you find your spirit, because I understand that we are what you call a mind, body, spirit complex. And I help coach your mind and your body. And then also people that are walking a spiritual path and want some help with that, I can also get you some magic mushrooms. So I work with a company that can get you them, and they will help you to overcome fears and traumas. People that like with PTSD, have problems with we call it antidepressants and stuff. Really good for that, because they help rewire the brain and create new neurons and neural pathways. And then I'm also the host of the Conscious Man 7 podcast. So content like this is found on my channel. So you can find me on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just search Conscious Man 7, my name, Todd Cave, together, and you'll find me on any of your broadcasts. And if you look on my Instagram or Facebook, all the links of where you can find me and my podcasts will be, because we're on Rumble, BitChute, all that. Everywhere, basically, you can find us,
Yeah.
So check us out. And if you're interested in working with me in some form of fashion and get into shape, or you just want to go on a spiritual journey, at Adriano_246 or Todd Cave on Facebook.
Excellent.